My name is Alex, and this happened a couple of years ago during the week leading up to Christmas. I was 28 at the time, living alone in a small apartment building on the outskirts of Chicago. My job as a freelance graphic designer meant I worked from home most days, which was great for avoiding the holiday rush. But it also meant I was pretty isolated during the winter months. The building was old, with creaky floors and thin walls, and most of my neighbors were elderly folks who kept to themselves or traveled to see family. That year, my parents had invited me to join them in Florida for the holidays, but I turned it down because I had a big project deadline on December 23rd. I figured I'd finish up, then drive down on Christmas Eve. In the meantime, I was enjoying the quiet, decorating a tiny tree, ordering takeout, and binge-watching holiday movies to fill the silence. It started innocently enough on December 18th. I was expecting a package from Amazon, some last-minute gift for my nieces and nephews. Around noon, the buzzer rang, and I hit the intercom to let the delivery guy up. When I opened my door, there was a man standing there holding a medium-sized box. He was in his mid-40s, I guessed, with a scruffy beard and wearing a plain brown jacket that didn't look like any official uniform I'd seen from UPS or FedEx. No hat, no badge, just jeans and boots crusted with snow from the sidewalk outside. He smiled politely and said, "Delivery for Alex Thompson?" I nodded, signed the electronic pad he handed me without thinking much of it, and took the box inside. It was the right size for what I'd ordered, so I didn't question it further. I set it under the tree and went back to work. Later that evening, around 7 p.m., when it was already pitch black outside and the wind was howling against my windows, I decided to open the package. Inside was a set of kitchen gadgets, nothing like the toys I'd ordered. There was a note taped to one of the items. "Sorry for the mix-up. This was meant for the apartment downstairs. Can you drop it off? Neighbor in 2B. I sighed, figuring it was a simple mistake. The building had only 4 floors, and 2B was right below me. I didn't know the people down there well, just an older couple I thought, but it was the holidays, so I grabbed the box and headed downstairs. When I knocked on 2B, no one answered at first. I waited a minute, then knocked again. Finally, the door creaked open, and there was the same man from earlier. He wasn't smiling this time. His expression was blank, almost expectant. "Oh, hey," he said, his voice flat. "You got my package." I handed it over, explaining the mix-up, and he nodded slowly. "Thanks. Must have been a labeling error." As I turned to leave, he added, "Hey, wait. You live alone up there, right? Saw you ordering a lot of stuff online lately." That stopped me cold. How'd he know that? I mumbled something about being busy with work and hurried back upstairs, locking my door behind me. It felt off, but I brushed it aside. Maybe he was just chatty, or perhaps he'd seen the delivery trucks outside. The next day, December 19th, I got another buzzer around the same time. I wasn't expecting anything, but I figured it might be a neighbor or something. Through the intercom, a voice said delivery for 3A. That's my apartment. I buzzed him up, and sure enough, it was the same guy. This time, he had a smaller envelope. "Special delivery," he said with that same polite smile. I took it warily, noticing he wasn't in any uniform again. Inside was junk mail, ad for local stores, but tucked in was another note. "Oops, wrong again. This is for 4C. Mind passing it on?" I felt a twinge of annoyance mixed with unease. Why was this happening twice? I went up to 4C, knocked, and an elderly woman answered. She looked confused when I explained. "I didn't order anything," she said, but took the envelope anyway. As I walked back down, I passed 2B and heard faint movement inside like someone pacing. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling. I double-checked my locks and even pushed a chair against the door, telling myself I was being paranoid. Around 10 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Thanks for helping with the packages. You're a good neighbor." My heart raced. "How'd he get my number?" I didn't reply, but I blocked the number and tried to sleep. The wind outside rattled the windows, and every creak in the building made me jump. On December 20th, things escalated. No delivery that day, but in the afternoon, I stepped out to grab groceries. When I returned, there was a small package leaning against my door. No label, just a sticky note. "For you this time. Merry Christmas." I froze in the hallway, glancing around. The corridor was empty. I brought it inside and opened it carefully. Inside was a cheap snow globe, The kind you get at dollar stores, with a little house inside. Shaking it felt wrong, like an invasion. There was no note, but when I turned it over, etched faintly on the bottom was my full name and apartment number. That was it. I called the building manager, an older guy named Mr. Ruiz who lived on the first floor. He came up, listened to my story, and checked the security camera in the lobby. That's odd, he said. No one buzzed in today, except you coming back from the store. We reviewed the footage. No sign of the man. Mr. Ruiz promised to keep an eye out and suggested I report it to the police if it continued. But it did continue. That evening, around 8 p.m., the buzzer rang again. I ignored it at first, but it kept going, insistent, like someone leaning on it. Through the intercom, the voice said, "Hey, Alex. I think I left something at your door by mistake." My blood ran cold. How did he know I was home? I didn't respond, just watched from my peephole as footsteps echoed up the stairs. There was a knock, soft at first, then louder. "Come on, open up. It's just a mix-up." I backed away, heart pounding, and grabbed my phone to call 911. The operator asked for details, and I whispered them as the knocking turned to pounding. "He's trying to get in," I said, my voice shaking. The door rattled in its frame, and I heard him mutter something like, "I know you're there. Just hand it over." The police arrived about 15 minutes later, 2 officers who knocked firmly and announced themselves. By then, the pounding had stopped, and when they checked the hallway, no one was there. I let them in, showed them the snow globe and the notes, explained the deliveries. They took photos, asked questions, but seemed skeptical. "Could be a prank," one said, "or maybe a neighbor with a grudge. We'll patrol the area tonight." They left me with a case number and advice to install a camera. After they gone, I barricaded the door and spent the night on the couch, every shadow making me tense. December 21st was worse. I worked from a coffee shop to avoid being home, but when I returned in the evening, my door was ajar. Nothing forced, no damage, but it was unlocked. Inside, things were subtly wrong, drawers slightly open, my Christmas tree lights unplugged, and on the kitchen table, another package. This one had a note. "Stop ignoring me. I just need to talk." Panic set in. He'd been inside. I called the police again, and the same officers came back. They dusted for prints, but found none usable. Gloves, probably. "Change your locks," they advised, "and maybe stay with family." I nodded, but inside I was furious. Why weren't they doing more? Footprints in the hallway. Snow led nowhere. Melted slush from multiple people. That night, I packed a bag and drove to a motel on the edge of town. But even there, around midnight, my phone rang from another unknown number. I answered stupidly, hoping it was the police. "You can't hide forever, Alex," the voice said, the same flat tone. "I know where you work from home." I hung up, turned off my phone, and barely slept. The next day, December 22nd, I went back with Mr. Ruiz to change the locks. While we were there, the buzzer rang. Mr. Ruiz answered. "Who is it?" The voice replied, "Delivery for 3A." We didn't buzz him in, but minutes later, footsteps in the hall. We opened the door to confront him. The man was there, holding yet another box. "What's this about?" Mr. Ruiz demanded. The man smiled that off-putting smile. "Just a neighborly gift." The police were called again. This time, they arrived quickly and detained him. Turns out, he wasn't a resident at all. He'd been squatting in the basement boiler room, watching deliveries, picking locks to borrow items. He had a record of petty theft and stalking. They arrested him for trespassing and breaking and entering. I finished my project that night and drove to Florida early. The apartment felt tainted, and I moved out a month later. Even now, every holiday delivery makes me check twice, and I never open the door without verifying. What scares me most is how easily he blended in, using the holiday chaos to get close. If I hadn't called the police that first time, who knows how far it would have gone. I'm Sarah, and this story takes place from about 5 years ago when I was 12, right around Christmas time. We lived in a suburban neighborhood in Ohio, the kind with big yards and holiday lights strung up everywhere. My parents were both teachers, so they had the winter break off, but that year, they decided to take a short trip to visit my grandparents, leaving me with my older brother, who was 17. He was responsible enough, or so they thought, and I was excited about the freedom, staying up late, eating junk food, watching movies. The house was decorated top to bottom. Wreaths on the doors, a glowing tree in the living room, even those inflatable Santas in the yard that bobbed in the wind. It snowed lightly most days, turning everything into a winter wonderland. But at night, the streets emptied out as people hunkered down. It began on December 20th, the day my parents left. My brother, Jake, was out with friends most of the afternoon, so I was home alone for a bit. Around 4 p.m., as the sun was setting early, the doorbell rang. I peeked through the window and saw a woman in her 30s standing there, bundled in a coat with a scarf over her head. She looked normal, smiling, holding a clipboard. I opened the door a crack. Chain on. "Hi there," she said cheerfully. "I'm with the neighborhood watch. We're going door to door to check on holiday safety, making sure lights aren't fire hazards, that sort of thing. Mind if I take a quick look around outside?" I hesitated. My parents had always said not to let strangers in, but she seemed official, and our neighborhood did have a watch group. I nodded, unlatched the chain, and let her step onto the porch while I watched. She walked around the yard, jotting notes, commenting on our decorations. "Looks good," she said, "but you might want to secure that extension cord, tripping hazard." As she left, she handed me a flyer, neighborhood watch tips for the holidays. It had safety advice, like locking doors and reporting suspicious activity. I thought nothing of it and went back inside. That evening, Jay came home, and we ordered pizza. Around 8 p.m., the doorbell rang again. Jake answered this time. It was the same woman. "Just following up," she said. "Saw a light out in your backyard. Mind if I check?" Jake shrugged and led her around back. I watched from the kitchen window. She fiddled with the string lights for a minute, then waved goodbye. "All set," she called. The next day, December 21st, I was playing video games when the phone rang, the landline, which we rarely used. I answered, and a woman's voice said, "Hi, this is Karen from the neighborhood watch. I was by yesterday. Everything okay?" I said yes, but she kept talking. "Good. I noticed your parents' car is gone. You kids home alone." That made my stomach drop. How'd she know? I mumbled that they were out shopping and hung up. I told Jake, but he laughed it off. Probably just nosy. Small town stuff. Later that afternoon, she showed up again, this time with a man, tall, in a heavy coat. "This is my partner, Mike," she introduced. "We're canvassing for any concerns." They asked about our security system. We didn't have one. If we had pets, no, and when our parents would be back. Jake answered vaguely, but I felt uneasy. They left after a few minutes, but as they walked away, I saw them stop at the end of our driveway, looking back at the house. That night, around 11 p.m., I couldn't sleep. The house was quiet except for the hum of the heater. I heard a soft crunch outside, snow under boots. Peeking out my bedroom window, I saw shadows moving in the backyard. 2 figures, one with a flashlight, inspecting our fence. My heart raced. I ran to Jake's room and woke him. He looked out and saw them too. "What the hell?" He grabbed a baseball bat and yelled through the window, "Hey, get off our property." The figures froze, then hurried away, disappearing down the street. We called our parents, who told us to lock everything and call the police if it happened again. But Jake didn't want to overreact, so we just stayed up watching TV, doors bolted. December 22nd brought more. In the morning, a note was slipped under our front door. "Saw some vulnerabilities last night. We can help secure your home. Call us." There was a number. Jake crumpled it and threw it away, but I was scared. Around noon, the doorbell rang. It was them again. We left a note. The woman said through the door, "Open up. We need to talk." Jake shouted back that we weren't interested and to leave us alone. They lingered on the porch for a good 5 minutes, knocking intermittently, before walking away. By evening, paranoia set in. Every car passing by made us jump. Around 9 p.m., the power flickered, then went out completely. The house plunged into darkness, the Christmas lights dying. Jake checked the breaker box in the basement. Nothing tripped. Outside, we heard voices low murmuring. I peeked out and saw the man tampering with our electrical box on the side of the house. "They're cutting the power," I whispered. Jake grabbed his phone and called 911, describing the intruders. While on the line, We heard the back door handle jiggle, someone testing it. My breath caught. I hid under the kitchen table, clutching a flashlight. The police arrived with sirens blaring, lights flashing. The suspects bolted, but the officers caught the woman hiding behind neighbor's shed. The man got away initially, but was picked up blocks away. Turns out, they weren't neighborhood watch at all, just a pair of burglars posing as such to case houses during the holidays. They'd hit several homes in the area, using the safety checks to scout layouts and schedules. Our call helped crack their operation. Police found stolen goods in their car. Our parents cut their trip short and came home that night. We got a real security system after that. Even now, at 17, I get anxious around Christmas when strangers knock. What if we hadn't noticed them that night? The thought of them breaking in while we slept still haunts me. Call me Tom, and this is from 3 years back. When I was 42, married with 2 kids, Emma, 10, and Liam, 8. We lived in a rural area outside Seattle, where winters are wet and windy. But that Christmas, a rare snowstorm hit, blanketing everything in white. My wife, Lisa, worked as a nurse and had night shifts leading up to the holidays, so I was often solo with the kids in the evenings. Our house was at the end of a long driveway, surrounded by woods, which made it feel cozy but isolated. We had the full holiday setup, tree twinkling, stockings hung, cookies baking to keep the spirits up. It started on December 15th, during the first flurries. The doorbell rang around 6 p.m., just as I was starting dinner. Through the storm door, I saw a young man, maybe 25, shivering in a thin jacket, no gloves, holding a bucket labeled Holiday Charity for the Homeless. His face was red from the cold, and he smiled weakly. "Evening, sir. Collecting donations for folks in need this winter. Anything helps." The kids peered curiously from the kitchen. I felt bad. Holidays are about giving, so I grabbed a few bucks from my wallet and dropped them in. "God bless," he said, then trudged off into the snow. The next night, December 16th, same time, doorbell again. It was him, bucket in hand. "Back again?" I asked, surprised. He nodded, covering more ground. "Storm's making it tough out there." I gave a couple more dollars, but something nagged. "Why the same house?" Lisa was home that night and suggested it might be a scam, but we let it go. December 17th, the storm worsened. Winds howling, power lines swaying. Doorbell at 6:30 p.m. Him again. This time, he looked rougher, eyes darting. "Any spare change? Or maybe some food?" The kids were excited, thinking it was like helping Santa's elves, but I was wary. I handed over a sandwich from the fridge and closed the door quickly. Watching from the window, he didn't leave right away. He stood at the end of the driveway, staring back. That night, around midnight, Lisa was at work and the kids asleep. I heard knocking, not the front door, but the side garage entrance. Heart thumping. I grabbed a flashlight and looked out. The man was there, bucket gone, pounding on the door. "Let me in. It's freezing," he yelled over the wind. I shouted back, "Go away. I'll call the cops." He persisted for minutes, then vanished into the woods. I called the non-emergency line. They said they'd send a patrol, but couldn't promise quick response in the storm. No one came that night. December 18th, no visit during dinner. But later, as I tucked the kids in, Emma said she saw the charity man outside her window earlier, waving. I checked. Footprints in the snow circled the house. I nailed the window shut and called Lisa, who rushed home early. Around 2 a.m., banging at the back door. "Please, I need shelter." His voice was desperate now. The kids woke crying. I herded them to the master bedroom, barricaded the door, and dialed 911. "Someone's trying to break in," I told the operator, voice steady for the kids. Banging turned to kicking. The door frame splintered slightly. We huddled, Liam clutching his teddy, Emma whispering prayers. Police arrived 20 minutes later. Storm delayed them. The man had fled, but tracks led to a makeshift camp in the woods. Tent, stolen goods from nearby homes. He was arrested the next day for multiple burglaries, using the charity guys to scope targets. We reinforced doors and got cameras. The kids still talk about it, scared of collectors. What if the storm had knocked out power? Or if I'd let him in that first time? Close calls like that change you.